Guess what, Detroit? We're moving. The State of Black Detroit address from December 30th to the new year, January 1st, 2022. We'll be doing the State of Black Detroit with Yusef Shakur. We're moving this address because the brother just lost his grandmother. Prayers up. And now we're going to bring in the new year. We're talking State of Black Detroit for 2022. And also, this is the day of faith for Kwanzaa. We're observing that. And this is all in recognition and honor and a fundraiser for the Detroit is Different community group. Hope to see you January 1st at 12 p.m. 12 noon, kick off the year on this live stream. Detroit is Different. All right, we are back in full effect in the Detroit is Different podcast studios. I'm back hosting Kari Frazier as usual with the Detroit is Different podcast. I have one of my brothers in arms, as he would say, definitely a comrade, someone I've known for a while. We do a lot of work together when we think about organizing and activism and a lot of other adjectives, I think, and verbs, nouns that people would describe. You may call it a lot of stuff. I personally call it's the work we do. This is what we love. This is what we do. And this is my man. So, Yusef Shakur, how are you doing?
Good brother. What up, though?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, a lot has definitely grown. Last time you were here, you brought in some Panthers, and you introduced kind of some of those Panthers. We didn't get into a longer discussion with us, and then before that, it was a couple years back where you came in and we were talking about what was happening in reference to George Floyd, the Who Shot Malcolm X documentary. You gave a take on that, which now is that's even changed, but the dynamics of just regular stories. You've been on Detroit is Different, and you're going to continue to be on Detroit is Different as we build together in all of this organizing, community movement builders, the work you're doing at Mama Akua House, and just being homies, you know what I'm saying? So with everything in the midst of that, Detroit is Different now is transitioning into a 501c3 for the work of a lot of studio. And with that, I was like, okay, I need an anchor event. Like most 501c3 organizations have like a gala and they have different events to raise a lot of funds. And I'm like, okay, how I want to do this is telethon style and do a State of Detroit address. Nobody better to give a State of Detroit address than the first person that I had do a State of Detroit address, and that's Yusef Shakur. So thank you again for accepting that, my brother.
Oh man, no doubt, man. Thank you for having me. Thank you for always being a supporter. No matter when I called, you always answered. I mean, a lot of people don't realize in relationship building, it's just a connection. I remember like yesterday, you and I both was at Joanne Watson's studio, and R.J. Watkins. Yeah, R.J. Watkins. Yeah. You know, you in there, you and her had a long history. Her and I had a semi-history, whatever. And you know, you were talking about one of your albums. I had one of my books. We exchanged, and the rest is history. You know, it didn't take a lot of, when you're in a lot of spaces, particularly Detroit, like we mean mugging each other, like we, it was brotherly since then, and a lot of times people struggle around figuring how someone places in your life. Like for me and you, like it was never an issue. Like that's my big homie, that's my big brother. It was never a struggle. And in times of working together, like you lead some days, I lead some days, or sometimes we neither one of us know how to lead. It's been that refresher of a relationship. I remember you told me you went somewhere with a suit on. They was like, they still rejected you.
Hilarious. Yeah, man, it be like that, bro. What's so funny of it too, as we talk about the friendship, the brotherhood, the other thing in this work of I guess, like I say, what's been labeled as community organizing, but we really do live in neighborhoods where we work. So the extension of it also, I think sometimes in activism, people think that you have to be line and step with everything. It's a lot of stuff where we disagree, and it'd be like, okay, I support you, Yusef, and if you need some speakers for that, that's what's up, but I'm not necessarily going to be part of that mission, but I'm going to support Yusef. And it's been times you'd be like, all right, Kari, I'm not going to support that exactly, but I can support in this facet. So like that's the other thing I think that's so cool about our relationship, and then now it's oozed over into like myself and Quasi and even me and G-Mac. Like, we may not agree on everything. I think we all agree on the destination of Black liberation, but the means of how we get there, it's good to sharpen swords, but we don't have to agree on every premise and every event and every activity, because we individuals.
And not only that, we have different history that has shaped us.
Yeah.
And part of that, our worldview doesn't always align, even though, again, the individual that you just named, we're all Black men, we all grew up in Detroit, but we experienced Detroit differently, and our life experience has taken us different ways, but it has brought us together, and I think that's the most powerful thing. But also what's missing in that conversation that you always are champion of, myself and the guys you mentioned, the values. What are the values that's governing the conversation, governing how you operate? And that's where we're allowed to be able to exist in our contradictions, where our contradictions are not antagonistic in that dynamic. So, I mean, that's the beautiful thing, where again we can see beyond our own individual selves. So, like when I call you and I'm like, man, hey, I want to do something with Detroit. Is different as a name. It's your brand, it's your business. But being able to help, again, I understand, like, hey, let's help promote it, let's help build it. It's a win-win. Like there's no take me to the backyard, like get with 100 questions, and not saying like that's not necessary, but again, out of relationship we built a level of trust. Yeah, and which is it's hard to do in today's time.
And let's talk and let's unpack that, because some of it, I believe, is the term I've been just standing on a little bit longer, and it's weird that King speaks to it in that famous speech, but the content and character, because that's really where I think it starts echoing more and more in my mind. As you say, you grow, but character speaks, and that character speaks in those times when you see a person interacting without the cameras on, without a lot of money on the line, just like, how are you moving, man? Like, and then when you witness that, you know what I'm saying? When you pull up on Mama a Cool House and you see the space coming together, and then you see yourself giving jobs to just a brother, walking down the street like, hey man, I need a couple dollars. And it's like, all right, you're going to have some work to do, but I'm going to give you a couple dollars. Right. And you welcoming that type of energy is so much different than, I think sometimes others.
But also, the fundamental thing about what you're saying is an aspect of Black Detroit that it gets put it in the washer and doesn't come out clean enough for us to put those clothes back on. What I mean by that is, like, that's that neighborhood shit. That's that at the core of what our grandmothers and grandfathers and our great uncles and what was came from the South. And when we unpack Black Detroit, like it emerged out of the white migration to the suburbs. It was predominantly white city. There was a underclass of Black population. When they left, this neighborhood became predominantly Black. My neighborhood became predominantly Black. Lower West Side, East Side, etc. And we was raised a certain type of way. And I think that's where, again, like, part of our connection is, like, we grew up similar in the same conditions. You'll find this for this house. This was owned by your grandmother. Your grandparents. My house my mother lived in was owned by my grandfather. Those same fundamental values, those same fundamental philosophy and lifestyles has shaped us. And I think that we've gotten away from that when we talk about Black Detroit, because we have not put forth an analysis what is Black Detroit that keep us accountable to ourselves.
That's deep. So, like, let's go right into some of those questions of building those relationships. What does relationship building with people, because now it's hard to believe, but I've known you for a decade plus, but how do you go about navigating new relationships? Because Yusef Shakur is a brand. Yusef Bunchy Shakur is someone that with your social capital and your life story, and now your works, your books, your speeches and lectures, like how are you judging new relationships and people that want to connect with you here and do work?
That's a great question, and just to be honest with you, it's hard because, like, nobody really wants to be vulnerable. Even myself, because when you be vulnerable, you open up the door to possibility getting fucked over, possibly getting exploited. Because the reality is, in America, black folks are on the treadmill of trying to get to the top of the food chain. And the thing about between intent and impact, right? So when you're chasing, as the little homies say, the bag, and all of us are chasing the bag in some form or some fashion. And so in reality, it doesn't allow for to build relationships because we're all trying to take a shortcut to get to the top. But then there's a group of us who are different because we've learned to be authentic in ourselves. Like I'm not being dictated by America. I'm not being dictated by the bag. I'm being dictated by my belief system, by my values, and by that you move different. And that's where you begin to like, man, something wrong with dude, man. Dude always he too stern, or the different words that people put on you. And so you just try to be open. But then again, I'm distanced too. Like I'll let anybody come in for pretty much, right? And deal with them and offer my cool house. Again, if you're an author trying to write a book, man, hey, here's whatever I can do. I mean, that's been my testimony greater than my own testimony. But within that, people, I don't think everybody's committed to black people. We say we are, but do we honestly have a love for black people? And if we do, it will function differently. So that's where, again, we have more of an idealistic relationship around, hey, you don't like Duggan, I don't like Duggan. You didn't like the former governor, I didn't like the former. That's not sustainable. So part of the relationship, again, when you talked about earlier, when you build a relationship, like I know you know me. We go deeper. I kind of have an idea of your values, have an idea what your philosophy, what you're made of, and like you said, like when I pull up on the block, like I'm seeing you in your rawness, how you move with the little homies and whatever. So it's not foreign or alien to me. It's so good because like most people don't know that I'm an introvert. Most people don't know that I'm shy. But most people who deal with me from afar, and particularly from a social media, like, dude, he be really going hard, or they may just heard a speech of me, and then when they get around, I'm like, what's wrong with dude? Why he ain't talking? Because I'm a shy person, right? But you have not created an opportunity for us to really get to know it. Or so most people just say he just for black people, and I am for black people, but I'm not so black that I black myself out. And I don't think we give each other enough room, but also who's determining how we relate to each other. In particular, in America and in Detroit Pacific, there's folks outside of our community that's controlling the money. Yeah, that has the purse of the spring, whatever, and that's determining our relationships, and that's creating more confusion, more conflict.
Now, you spoke to the word, and every time as you were saying that, it just started ringing in my mind. You mentioned it earlier, value. And I just had this discussion when I interviewed Baba Malik about capitalism and, its role. And one of the strangest things about capitalism that it quantifies so much value on everything. Due to it, we place higher value on people with money, like as if having access to perceived wealth makes you more of a authority on everything. You're a better person, you're smarter, you're everything. I mean, we just saw that with our last president of the United States. And his whole playbook, my whole lifetime, even the book that I read, his first book, that someone else wrote, but I think that happens for many people. Right. You know what I'm saying? It's just when he took that position, they were like, whoa. We don't want him in this position. But to me, the whole playbook of what Donald Trump represented is the playbook of what America has created. Because it's like, if you're a white man with money, you obviously are smart, you're savvy, you're a leader, you're someone to be, you're sexy, you're someone to be respected, you're somebody to be admired. I want to be in a room with you, I want to take pictures with you. And like his works throughout his life show all of this being documented. But it's just like in that position, it's like, wait, a minute, we don't want him here.
Right.
So not to speak so much about him as much as value on people. As you said, like, how do we redetermine as a people values of people, and what values do we place on people and all people? Like, I spoke to character. First, I can start to you, but what would you say to most of our people in reference to that?
It's simple. When you look at black people in America, and our struggles and our journey, we've gotten away from that, right? So to the point of like, man, I don't want to see another slave movie, or no crazy shit like that, which is like slavery is American history.
Yeah,
how we responded to slavery is our history, which is Black resistance, which is developing us as a people. Because the things like who we are today, they didn't want that. Right? You're educated, I'm educated, but in reality, they didn't want us to receive a formal education. And our great-grandparents was part of that. However, they had a moral education. And as a result of that moral education, they raised their children to ultimately go on to get educated. And so members, if you think back to your great-grandmother and your grandmother and your uncles and whatever, like they had small little sayings and stuff like, all money ain't good money. I mean, they moved a certain way. Those are the values. We've gotten away from those things. So it's another part of that trickology of integrating. The more we integrate into American society, the less we are of ourselves, and that's been a struggle because we still learning what it means to be a Black person that has African roots, and African roots is a whole nother conversation in itself. But there's a mixture of the two that have produced a certain mind state. Like when we talk about black, we don't mean in the color. We're talking about a political mind state of retracting the inferiority that has been imposed on us. Where, again, if I come here and I have a bad experience, like I'm like, fuck, Detroit is different. And where, again, if I have a bad experience at another business, would I say fuck them? No, it's part of life. That bad experiences occur, but because I can see deeply into who you are and overstand, like shit happens some days, man, and especially to have that conversation with you, like I had a bad experience. Like this is part of the relationship building. This is part of the values. Again, I value you as a brother. When I grew up, no one ever told me to value you as a brother. So as a result, it allowed me to ultimately see you and other Black men as enemies, which helped me formulate a gang mentality, and I treated you as such, and you treated me as such, which has its roots in Black self-hatred. And these seeds are still being permeated through our community and in our households that we have to cut out. And this goes to your point around wealth. We are, as a people, we rarely have had no wealth. I mean, our bodies was the wealth. Right, so that's where you see guys, when the little homies they spend over $200,000 on a fucking car. Yeah, don't even own the house. Yeah, I mean, when you look at like the tragedy in the hip hop game today, every artist has over, trying to get over $1 million worth of jewelry or more. Right, for what? What value does that really have? And even looking at Jay-Z, right? I mean, Jay-Z is able to look how he looks now because he's in a wealth bracket. What can you say to me? When we go to Jay and say, what do you have to say? I mean, I don't even know if this guy has formal education, but it doesn't matter because his wealth puts him in a position. What's funny, it was that meme going around last year where it said, would you take $400,000 or a dinner with Jay-Z? And I was like, I didn't even, like, I can't even quantify this in my mind because in my mind, I know this is back to, like, I already hear Baba Malik saying you want a gentler form of capitalism, echoing as I say this, like, the wealth of the dollar is the liquidity of the dollar. The liquidity means that I can transfer a dollar and quantify value with it. A meeting with Jay-Z, unless I get to curate that in a certain way where I say, all right, Jay-Z, if I have this 1 hour conversation with you, can I go live on Zoom and maybe sell that to other people? And then from that Zoom, now I can leverage that for more opportunities and things like that. Like it's going to be harder to liquefy a conversation with Jay-Z. But as you speak about it, even the only reason that was a premise in the discussion was because the idea of Jay-Z has something paramount importance to tell me just based on the perceived wealth that I believe he has acquired in life. And who fed us that though, right? When we look at white communities, and I'm cautioning what I say and how I say this, but their wealth is just balanced out. It's just balanced out across the board, where again, our wealth is Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, you know, a few of us, because it's not many of us that have accumulated a lot of wealth. Right, and so they tell you, like, Curry, you can be the next Michael Jordan, or you can be the next Oprah Winfrey, and but we're basing it upon wealth, but not realizing what does it really take, not from an education or character or commitment, but assimilation aspect to
be
get
in that position. And what you spoke, even with that, I want to go back to, you spoke to moral education. What's a moral education?
I think a moral education, again, is centered around the values, like authentically knowing who we are, authentically knowing, hey, I don't have a formal education, I can't read or write, but however, morally, I'm accountable to my family. Morally, as a man or as a woman, as a child, I'm accountable to my community. To be, again, the word you used earlier, having a good character. But a good character comes out of having principles, having values, having a philosophy of life that goes beyond yourself, to be able to be a good contributor, starting in your home and in your community. And they're recycling each other, that becomes cornerstones and instrumental. So again, I mean, like, if any of us go back and examine our life, our history and our family, I'm pretty sure we can find somebody who had that moral education. Like, you trying to, like, they went out, they worked every day of their life. They came home, they cleaned, they did everything, but if you put a book in front of them, they couldn't read. They didn't allow that to stop them from, I'm still a human being. I still have other Same thing when we think about a person with a disability, right? So what happens? If they can't see, the hearing strengthens. You know, other things strengthens on their body. Same thing. So again, because they didn't have the formal education, morally, they grew greater in a sense of they became beacons of our community because of the racism that existed that prevented them from succeeding. They found ways how to succeed despite that.
And this goes into what I think we have a wealth of in our community, but we don't honor it the same way.
We don't see it as well.
Of social capital.
Yeah, we don't.
That's what I call it. Like someone, I always tell you this. I think your mom is one of the coolest people ever, because I don't know anybody that ever has been on the block of Ferry Park and met Yusef's mom. If you ever go to the back to school kickoff and giveaway, it's gonna connect. It starts at his mom's house and stretches, because it started at his mom's house, but your mom has a wealth of social capital. And when I say that, I mean, like, I would go as far as to say, if your mom walked out the house with like 7 bags, first off, she wouldn't be able to get off the porch without people helping her. But let's say for whatever reason, she's, a couple blocks away. It's going to be so many people that help her, and not just because they're good Samaritans, because she's developed a reputation in that neighborhood that intersects her, and not because she's even Yusef's mama. Like, this is different. Right. This is like really people that know your mom. You know what I'm saying?
I'm validated because of her. She's not validated because of me.
Yes, and I don't know if people recognize that type of social capital, but our communities are filled with people with those wealths. And like, I look to people like that where it's like, one time I saw your mom at my hardware store, because it was like, yeah, they ain't got what I need over where I'm at.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But it was still people in my hardware store that was like, you ain't got to pay for that.
Yeah.
I'm about to pay for that for you. And I know for a person looking and thinking to themselves, it's like I think that richness of social capital, when you understand, it's not like if I don't know, if you see Dan Gilbert in Starbucks, if you pay for his coffee, you're trying to pay for his coffee so you can plan a meeting with him and be like, hey, I got this whole idea. People ain't bottom screws and the tools for your mama because they trying to set up a play so that they can make some money. They did that because it's like, because she's a cohort in our community that puts in work. And she's developed this to the point where her money is no good here.
But those individuals are the cornerstones of Black Detroit, and so your theory around this social capital was the motor around Black Detroit. Again, if you and I was to pull some books and talk to some people about Black Bottom Detroit, this is what we would find.
Yeah.
But because of assimilation, because of this illusion of advancement, right? Hey, man, and some of it makes sense because, again, we we still live in
we're in a dual reality,
right?
As they say, like a dual consciousness.
Absolutely, and then the
invisible man,
right? And the dynamics of so let's break it down from here. If I'm a single mother, she's doing everything that she can, but I can't afford to lose my kids to the streets. I can't afford to, so I got to move to Southfield. I can't, because I want to stay in Detroit, but shit, the schools are just terrible, right? Do you put an indictment on her, or is it indictment on the system? And so that's a different form. Is that assimilation per se? Probably not, but it falls within that character. But we're not examining it. But there's others who because they see things differently, right? And the hood became the hood because so many of us left the neighborhood.
And I agree. I mean, I've always said, I've had this discussion and it's come up again around, like, I have all these pictures of Nipsey, because not necessarily the work of Nipsey and what he represents, but it's what the story represents of the work he's done right there in his Crenshaw neighborhood.
Right. And let me cut you off. That's a great point, right? So, in the unfortunate murder of Nipsey, the people in his wealth class or greater, their first response is, this is why I don't go back to the neighborhood.
And I was going to say the same thing about Young Dolph, and that comment has come up again. Like, this is why you got to leave the hood.
Which it had nothing to do with that.
No.
It was. I mean, and those are similar but very different situations. But what we don't do, we don't take the time to examine the dynamics. And again, I don't know Young Dolph that well, unfortunately.
His story, yeah.
But in saying that, I didn't know a lot about Nipsey. But again, after they're killed, more comes out about them. I mean, particularly Young Dolph. I saw some video where some folks got fired from playing his music. He found out about it, brought him to the stage, and I think gave each of them $20,000. Yeah, right. It goes back to character. It goes back to values.
Yeah,
but because how he's shaped his music or his career it turns off people, right?
Yeah,
and I get it, but. And those are the contradictions in terms of two different mindsets. But then when you look at Nipsey, he was on a whole, he's more greater to me than Jay-Z could ever be.
Yeah.
In that short time period, and I hate to do the comparison, but he rooted himself in the neighborhood, right? That's Black Los Angeles. That's Black Detroit. Because fundamentally, that's where our power base is. Like, again, if we're trying to build ourselves up economically, but not also building our neighborhoods up politically and socially, it's like having a deformed titty. Like one titty is big and one small. They both have to be invested in and developed for both to mature. And we have not done a deep dive, right? And examining. Let's just start from 1969. Or 67, the rebellion to now. I mean, there's like, use Wendell Anthony, for example, right? Some people love him, some people hate him, right? But I remember somebody, Tafari was telling me, if we go back and examine Wendell Anthony in the early 80s, he's over there on Dexter and Elmhurst.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
With an African name.
Yeah.
He's on Dexter and Elmhurst with an African name.
I remember it because the car wash I used to go to, the classic car wash right there on Dexter and Elmhurst, used to almost have like you could almost consider it walking in that car wash that is closed now, but I wish would reopen. It was like a shrine to his works and all his works through the 80s. I mean, he's a central trailblazer right here, rooted and definitely more from a lens of what we would think of all Pan-African rights movement then, like in that snapshot of time.
Right. And I'm saying like people don't have a right to grow. Because I'm not the same person I was last year. Our ideology may change, our worldview may change, but do our values change? That's the question. Again, we come back to, and so in this way, I use Wendell Anthony as an example of examining, those things. But we it's kind of thing in the rap game right now. If you criticize somebody, you critical of someone's rapping styles, now you hating. You be critical of Wendell, or you just don't like Wendell. No, this is accountability. I can be this tomorrow. You can be critically examine me as well. And not only just Wendell, it's a multitude of different dynamics. I'm going to use on the east side where we have the Kabas Culture Center. We had Inner City Subcenter. I mean, no one even those are two jewels. Yeah, two jewels that we had in the city of Detroit that was Black owned, that was Black recreation centers. that no longer exists.
Yeah.
We have to ask ourselves, why is that?
Yeah.
Why didn't we duplicate? I mean, we're trying to do it now with Detroit. It's different on the lower level. We doing it with Quasi over on the Shed and others, right? But we had two institutions locked and loaded in the neighborhood, which was really more ahead of the game. Mm-hmm. But because of no accountability, and also, I mean, the work that we do in the neighborhood is very hard work, and because of when I pull up, you don't know what you might run into, right?
Yeah.
But that's the love and the passion, and I get it on some levels. Like that shit can eat at your soul. Yeah. That shit can wear you out. Everybody's not built for it. But again, if we're strategizing and out of that strategy and our values builds the type of accountability. Because again, it's shit flip flopping. It's flip flopping again. I remember like when Kwame Kilpatrick, when he was mayor, right? And the conversation around, taking over the school board or the mayor trying to take over the school board. That was Kwame's idea. Wendell Anthony led the charge. No, this is going to remain within the community. Years later, you basically had Duggan on that same shit that Kwame was doing. Where Wendell Anthony at now? He's not saying anything. Like, what? Why are you not saying nothing now? What changed? Again, and this is not an indictment on Wendell per se. It's an indictment on the philosophy. Yeah, that's governing. But also, if also come and say I'm tired or I changed, I can accept that. And not mean you have to answer to me, but answer to us as a people.
And that's one of the things. As you do more of this work, you end up meeting more of the people. You see more of the macro. You get more of the context, as I call it, the other side. Mm-hmm. And when you get more of the context of the other side, you look up one day, as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You know what I'm saying? So you get more of the context of the other side, and you start saying, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. But then you got to stop for a second and then pull back and say, 1 second, time out. I have veered so far from the origination of who I wanted to help and how I wanted to help them that now I've diluted, as you say, as you integrate more, what is actually helpful to those people that I'm connected to. And it's tough because in this work, that same analysis of not just Reverend Anthony, it can be Bishop Van, it can be the works of so many, of like when you start here, where do you end up there? And who are you engaging with? And that's where I love the community so much, because the richness of the social capital, that's where that exists. Because when you get disassociated from the people around you for real, and then you walk back into that hardware store, mm-hmm. and does that person walk up out of nowhere like, no, I got this?
Absolutely.
Or do they start looking at you like, damn, what you doing in here? Right. Because when they start giving you that damn what you doing in here look, that means you've deviated. Because the community speaks up, and they'll let you know just by distancing themselves from whatever your work is, no matter how much you feel you are a community.
I mean, and to your point, what was it, one of the Winans that got robbed right there on right
there next to the hardware store that I'm talking about on Linwood and Davidson.
But again, if you're tied and connected to the community, mm-hmm. would that happen? I mean, there's a possibility, right? But again, it probably wouldn't happen because people protect what they respect. People protect what they love and what loves them in return. Yeah. Now, are there some folks that's so damaged that they can't even comprehend? Absolutely. But it mm-hmm. changes the landscape of the conversation, because what you're describing through the theory of this social capital, it is what's keeping Black Detroit, Black neighborhoods afloat.
Intersected, like the classic story of when, what was it? I think it was Muhammad Ali had that Rolls Royce that was stolen in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. Then they found out it was Muhammad Ali's Rolls Royce. Yeah. The very next day, it was returned, new upholstery, detailed and everything, because it's like, okay, this is Muhammad Ali's car. Same thing I think happened like a couple weeks later to like somebody else from Philly, and it's like, they get the car back.
and there's plenty of stories like that. But even verifying from this position when certain shit happened, you might get a call like, man, such and such happened. Do you know such and such? Let me call Yusef or whoever, right? Who has those relationships. And that's, and those relationships are tied to the people.
Yeah.
And again, it's what's keeping us afloat. And what we're trying to hold off against is this integration theory, this assimilation theory that even now as we're talking, and the aha is reversing. It's finding itself marching into Black Detroit. And as it's marching, it's decelerating us to further losing our grip, but we holding on as much as we can. I mean, when you look at this block, when you look at my neighborhood, right? We ain't seen no investment. You not know, like, just, hey guys, what you guys want to do over here? How can we help? But versus they saying, well, since y'all lost, it's only two, it's many houses on the block, but there's only 2 people living over there. We ain't sending no resources over there. That's another form of disintegrating, but integrating, because what happens is the white folks are saying, I still see the beauty.
Yeah.
I see the potential. I'm gonna buy that goddamn piece of shit, and you come back 5-6 years later, it looks a lot better. Where we're on the other hand, and it's part of our oppression, and it's part of our being traumatized by the urbanness of America, and particularly in Detroit. Man, I'm trying to get the hell away from here. Yeah. I don't want nothing to do with it. Yeah. And it's the pain. The same thing we're saying, I don't want to see another slave movie, because you can't heal what you don't want to confront.
And this is, I guess, where I always push back on those people, because for the Nipsey or the Young Dolph story, I think of the Henry Louis Gates story, and not just him, but so many others. I think nothing is scarier than me being a Black man in Troy, Broomfield Hills, Royal Oak. I can't imagine what it would be like to have, I guess now it's more a cultural term. If I had a Karen for a neighbor, nothing would be scarier to me, because I assume every time I have a friend show up, a cousin show up, if I tried to do this, Detroit is different in Royal Oak, you know how many citations before I would be locked up for some inciting, and in my mind, I'm so, I guess people say conspiratory, kind of like with the Nipsey thing. I would think the Royal Oak police would send in someone to interview in here with a pistol to do something stupid so that they could shut me down and get me arrested. Right. That's exactly how I think what happened if Detroit is different was happening in Royal Oak, because I feel as though culturally there are, I guess, dangers, but I understand the nuances of living in a neighborhood like this. Neighborhoods like that are not designed for me. They're not welcoming to me, and I don't care about how well I speak, how much my education is. All they seeing is, we want to get this nigga the hell up out of here as soon as possible. Your grass is too high. Citation. You parked over here this way. Citation. You had 3 people come over. Citation. You got people pulling up at all times of the night. Now it's like cops parked at the end of the block, just like around Nipsey's business. For people to know, it was a great piece, I think, the LA Times, but a lot of brothers out there in LA was saying, if it was over a 3-year investigation at Nipsey Hussle's location, the minute that the LA Rams decided to build that stadium over in Inglewood, not far from Nipsey's store. So what they ended up doing is saying that it was gang activity there, and basically if you were a Black man that purchased any belongings from the Crenshaw store of Nipsey Hussle, probably it was a 1 out of 5 chance that the police were going to flag you down and stop you just for going in the store and buying something. And they were going to say it was gang related. And It was raided time and time again. It's that type of shit, systemic racism, that I know I would deal with if I'm in Troy or Royal Oak or many of these other places where Black folks say they want to run to because they don't feel safe there. I feel like I can deal with what's labeled as thugs or goons or whatever negative colloquialism we're calling some brothers that just, as you may say, like a lost soldier in the battle. I feel like I can interact with them.
But you're talking about a form of anti-Blackness that plays itself out, and the larger America deals that anti-Blackness violently. And that violently may be socially, it may be politically, it may be economically, and it may be ultimately physically. Let me give an example. I knew someone who lived in Roseville. Her son, was missing. She did what a typical American is supposed to do. What? Call the police. Yeah. Hey, my son's missing. They ask questions. Boo boo. This how long have you missing? They began to walk in her house.
Yeah.
They began to interrogate her like she did a crime.
Yeah.
Not go bend around and start riding through the neighborhood to go try to help find her. She became the criminal. The house she rented the house, so there was some plumbing issues. Wasn't her, it was the owners, but the owner had not resolved it. A couple of days later, they called Child Protective Service on her. I mean, she found herself in a pile of shit because of the racism, the anti-blackness that occurred. And if she hadn't left Roseville and come back to Detroit,
you would have never dealt with that shit.
Yeah, and it's not that, again, the issue was, all right, and even though, like, that was a white family, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, let's call city council, let's call such and such, right? Yeah. And this is what creates anti-blackness.
That would have been an Amber Alert on my phone.
Absolutely, but also then to your point, to unpack around Nipsey, I mean, you just described an updated version of colonialism.
Yeah.
Again, and it's all about the value of property, fundamentally. So Nipsey became a thorn potentially in this monopoly game.
Yeah.
And many of us can't comprehend it because we have not done enough research, or we're still in a state of shock. Like Malcolm X just didn't die. He was assassinated.
Yeah.
King didn't die. He was assassinated.
Man, that FBI Files King documentary was so revealing, and I suggest most people. IFC did a documentary on the MLK Martin Luther King files, and when you connect, and what's even worse about this shit is it was so many FBI informants. Mm-hmm. Working right in unison, almost to the point where, like, I'm gonna say this right now because, like, I guess the LGBTQ community wants to, like, exalt who Baynard Rustin and what he represents. He was an FBI. He was an informant. So I can't respect this.
He was?
Yes. He was an informant. Almost damn near, like, of the 12 people around Martin Luther King, 6 of them was top informants. And this is the infiltration, putting in false information, giving information, pushing people certain ways, causing a dissension between black unity, because this is what the FBI organization has always done. It always is represented. Everything J. Edgar Hoover represents is that. It was built on the whole idea of breaking down black families, black liberation, what black organizing is. So we need to be very mindful of anything dealing with the roots of what the FBI represents. Even watching that, and I haven't talked to you, it's funny, we talk about films and stuff. It angered me so much watching the Black Messiah movie, because it was like they're trying to make this seem as though any reasonable person would have just went on and been an FBI informant, because, I mean, look at the situation he was in. Don't you understand why he's an informant? Oh, hell no. Now, if you snitching on a criminal, quote unquote, that's different, because to me, a snitch in that game, it all meshes. But if you know that this person is just for black liberation, and then the FBI agent sits across from you, is like, we want you to get everything you can on this person because we want to corrupt them, and you recognize that these informants are paid tens of thousands of dollars, the agents are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, the investigations are given millions of dollars just to stop black liberation.
And you say that so easily and seamlessly that people may miss the point. Black liberation, is a threat. It's a threat to what? To the white order.
Yeah.
And as a result, so again, this is the pathology of white supremacy, of the aggression of it. Anytime it feels threatened, it moves to the point of neutralizing, physically, economically, politically, or socially, right? And we don't understand that, and we see that in Black Detroit. Like, people are like, why is the neighborhood like it is? Like, and we get the blame for it. Mm-hmm. But it's other things that has happened that has undermined us, and then our so-called leaders, they're doing very well, mind you. in Detroit, they're black, but these are the things that we have to examine and understanding. But it goes back to the social capital, and because we're in today's time, we don't think like, there's not a COINTELPRO, there's none of these extreme things. But again, when you go downtown, it's so much fucking police down there, so much surveillance down there, all these things that now that trying to organize in this condition. We can, but we're not even examining this because one, you don't even assume, like you'll say, like, man, I ain't talking like Malcolm. You don't have to talk like Malcolm. You black.
Your blackness is so threatening. When I think of really close with her sister, I think of Janae Ayers lost her council seat because of the idea of the investigation. That the image of FBI agents storming city council and taking out.
That's a cold game.
Taking out files.
You talking about?
It's been no charges have been filed. No,
it's guilty to proven innocent.
And in all of these games, and even the whole concept of like the roots and the premise. And I'll always stand on this. We say you're innocent till proven guilty. The FBI establishes a target. When they establish a target, you're a target until you decide to become an informant. And So to me, to establish a target already is establishing a person as guilty.
But to understand your point, the what's the white guy that got caught up on bribery?
Gabe Leland.
Yeah, I mean, Gabe, right? He was allowed to remain in the city council.
Yeah.
Nowhere was they constantly writing stories about him.
No.
Same thing with. I mean, they swept the Mike Duggan shit so far up under the rug that we don't even think about it no more, right?
About the deal for the demolition of the houses.
I mean, that one, but I'm talking about the one, his girlfriend.
Where his staff helped raise funds
gave her a grant
for his mistress.
Yeah, gave her a grant
at the time. That now is his wife, but it was his mistress at the time. Yeah, that was
all this. All fishy. It smells bad. Mm-hmm. But again, and this is where like hoping to understand anti-blackness and how it is drilled in us. We know within our bones if that was one of us. And what that tells is like, nigga, you know your place. They can get away with that shit, but we can't. And this is where it works as like a leash. It keeps us not from doing that type of stuff, but when we talk about black liberation, we talk about black self-determination, we talk about black Detroit and all, man, why you always gonna talk about that black shit? Like that black shit gonna get us killed. That black shit gonna get us locked up. On and on. Yeah. Because they've been beating us down for decades. And that's the cold thing about it. Mm-hmm. It's a propaganda game. Yeah. It's rhetorical analysis. It's metaphorically, keeping us locked in of inferiority.
Which I do have this premise because it's so unique. My mind in marketing and work in marketing. Because so if people know the allure of marketing for me is always it's storytelling, and it's also seeing how people respond to the stories. That's why I'm allured by marketing. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about blackness also now has been like most times, I think it's been used as an icon for many other movements to like use blackness as like, okay, this is how bad oppression can be. So please give to our whatever organization so that now we can help. It's like these people don't have homes. Usually that's going to be black people. These people have messed up water situations. Usually that's going to be black people. These people, look at how the LGBTQ community is being treated. Usually that's going to be black people. And it all is under the lens of like these other movements. Look at how women are treated. Usually it's a black woman. Look at how young boys are treated. Usually it's going to be young black boys. Mm-hmm. Like all of these movements use blackness. Use the disparity of blackness.
It's called black. What was now people are black suffering.
Yes, use black suffering and put that in front, but and use it as a commodity to interact as if this is activism. But in reality, like, what is it?
It's manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, again, the reality, like we're all human beings. And so as black folks that who have African roots, and being an African, what we all realize, like we're spiritual people. That's just in us. Yeah. We don't hate and all that type of shit, that the ugliness that takes the world. Like that's just not who we are. I mean, if you talk to every black person, even though a white person may have just did something, like, man, I still forgive him. I mean, you that's just the nature, the natural order of how we think and how we move. Mm-hmm. And they found the way to use that against us because at the at the end of the day, what they're doing is exploiting our suffering and our pain. So as white women, they suffer, they go through their own form of oppression with their white men, but they're still tied to that system, that white system of white supremacy and whatnot. And so they have not transformed themselves. So they've exploited us. And because we're so busy trying to just, man, it's a good fight, or what Rodney King said, can we all just get along? And it's where it requires the critical analysis. It requires the going deep in and just pulling shit apart before you become to try to be an ally with a motherfucker. Before you just join a movement without first understanding your own movement where you fit in. And this is where intersectionality has been hijacked. We're trying to intersect shit without first understanding how does it intersect. Like white feminism and white women struggle. It's legit. I won't argue that. However, are they also transforming and trying to dismantle white supremacy? Because that is at the core of your problems.
Yeah. I mean, it is... It's real, and it's many things. Most movements and most things that, and that's kind of why I even push back against the anti-capitalism movement, because it's white supremacy that I'm against. My dad had that post where he was saying, look, merchants existed in Africa for eons, and if we think that a mercantile class is what capitalism is, if I have a good and a service and then we exchange with whatever that is. But let's not romanticize if capitalism it ends. The same way that, at one point in time, as Bernie Sanders was running on a lot of those points and everything. And then when Bernie was asked, hey, man, how you feel about reparations? And Bernie damn near immediately said, no bet. I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. But it's in all of the progressive thoughts about how he feels about justice, how he feels about capitalism, about how he feels about us needing to be socialists, about how he feels about, where home rights needs to be. When it's hey, man, how you feel about reparations? It's
that was the question from the short true color.
Nigga, please. You know what I'm saying? So it's that same reality when you walk and step in this. And then also in that psychosis, it was Baba Malik that said, when we're interacting, we're all healing from things. Mm-hmm. And even in the movement of mental health and trauma and everything like that, that's a movement. But it's real. When we're interacting with our people, some of the realness that we're gonna have to deal with, it's there. Right. So some of where we're trying to get to, as you say, get to the bag, that exists. But that real shit, that social capital, that does exist too. And I've never served time like you served time and incarcerated, because to me, prisons are designed for black men to be incarcerated, and also black women, but predominantly black men. Yeah. But it's still a level of, even from everyone I know that have served, it's a level of moral code in there.
But to your point, this is the thing about capitalism. Mm-hmm. All the ism, capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, they feed off of people. They need people to feed off of. Yeah. Right? And so not only is it prison becomes a place for black men, it has become a place for black women. Yeah. It has become a place for people in general. Yeah. Right. They've always sacrificed their own to make a greater point. And so the thing about capitalism is not by itself. It's tied to other systems, and as they work together, the white supremacy and capitalism together is a bad motherfucker. And this is again when we say that I don't want to see another slavery movie. Who introduced us the concept of slavery is white people. But fundamentally, it was through colonialism, and we don't understand what colonialism, which is the domination. I repeat, the domination of something. When you take control of some shit, then you can create whatever afterwards. All right. And the afterwards was slavery, mm-hmm. and we're talking about the afterwards, but we're not talking about the root. Yeah. And as the root of it is. It's a power dynamic. You're stripping, again, this is where imperialism comes in. You're stripping the land of its resources. So imperialism happened, which they stripped the land from the indigenous people, and then they transferred us over here, which is colonial occupation, and which now they created another system of imperialism. So we had to break all this shit down to understand
it. And I want to say this because I already see some of my economic professors that's definitely, and I like my Walsh. I love my Walsh College education, which is very conservative, because it was a good back and forth between me and most of my professors. And
Right.
the first thing they're gonna always say
I can only imagine that conversation.
oh yeah, it was beautiful, and they like me too because they knew I was ready to talk. So they'd always say, well, slavery existed in Africa too, but the concept of what it was is so distorted. It's like if you've been eating hot and ready's your whole life, and then you go to Chicago and get a deep dish pizza, and you like, what the hell is this? It's two totally different things. It's not intergenerational. If you were a drummer in this village and now your village was at war with that village, you're going to be a drummer in that village. You still have access to build and develop a family. You still have access to exist in society. So to say this most distorted view of what enslavement happened here in not just in America, but definitely in the Caribbean and also South America, Brazil definitely being one of those places. Like this distorted, tormented view that led with raping every woman, led with raping men, led with starving people on ships, led with breeding people, led with all these.
You know what you're describing? An institution. They institutionalized that.
Yeah. Whereas it's like if I don't know what you Tutsi, I'm Zulu, we go to war.
Right, exactly.
We win. You made huts. Guess what? You still making huts, but now you no longer Zulu.
And the difference is you talking about dehumanization, and there's different degrees of I can admit that. However, what you just described is at the most extreme. Yeah. And then also, not only that's the most extreme, but you're talking about very cunning people, folks who came in with a intent and a purpose to manipulate. So again, as you just use example, a Zulu and another tribe that's at war with each other. Oh, let me add a little fire to that.
That's where the FBI informant type stuff happens. Yeah. Like even when people say, well, more black people sold black people into slavery than anybody.
But what get missed in that translation, power.
Yeah.
It's a fight over power. Yeah. If the same thing on the block. If me and you arguing over this, neither one of us own the block. You argue, you making a couple dollars, I'm making a couple dollars. They have a vision for our neighborhood. So I need to get rid of Kari. I need to get rid of Yusef, so we can come in and bulldoze this motherfucker over and do whatever. Same thing in the penitentiary. Like, you're right. It's more brothers that's in the male population in prison, right? But it's lesser guards. But because of this institution and how the institution is set up, you always same thing with what's the enslavement of our people. You always quote, why didn't they fight back? Well, they fought back, but why didn't they overthrow it? Again, what colonialism does, it strips you of your identity. It strips you of your dignity. It reduces, this what made slavery what it was. The enslavement came out of a system, an institutionalization that stripped us of our ability to be able to formulate to be who. And the same thing on the blocks. Once a young brother or young sister, whoever, once they can get a taste of who they are, Malcolm is an example of that. Dexter Shakur is an example of that. These was people that was just doing whatever on the block, but as soon as they was able to sit down and someone taught them something, this is bringing it back to the conversation around Black Detroit. Like Black Detroit at its height was, we had everything that we needed within it, but also again, it goes back to a book that I'm reading, talks about an orator called the Institute for Black World. And the phrase they had was, is it in the interest of black people? And we need to reinstitute something like that. Because it's easy to say, my business for black people, but really, what is the criteria? What is the measurement that you have developed? Because again, you saying, come buy black. all right, if I come buy black, then is any of that money going back into the black community? Mm-hmm. You know, I know it's going into your black household. Like, this is the issue around black capitalism.
Yeah.
Again, this is the flawedness of black economic development, because it's not economic development, it's individual development.
Yeah. And then furthermore, it's not just individual development, it's individual development where you could be a black face exalting, you know, corrupting the community. Back to, like I say, he's still one of my favorite rappers of all time. But, you know, for the stadium to be built in Brooklyn, for the Barclays Center to be built in Brooklyn, it displaced many families. Oh, yeah. It displaced many people. So it was like, let's allow Jay-Z to be a part owner in this.
But again,
so
that goes back to colonialism. That's I mean, this is all this shit is still tied to each other. It's just a new version of it.
And for many people, it was like, well, you know, he's an owner, and then you find out that he owns like probably like
less than 1%,
0.0005% percentage of it. Yeah. But he also was right out front. I'm gonna design the jerseys and all of the ribbon cuttings. He was an offset and a marketing ploy in the grand scheme to make it seem like anybody in the community saying, damn, man, this is bad for black people in Brooklyn. And it's like, nah, but look at Brooklyn's own. And he's going to do a whole week of free concerts for you to come rock with Jay-Z. And it's like, well, damn, man, you done took away my grandma's house that was rent fixed. And now she has to move to God knows where, New Jersey.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But my homies is cool with it because it's like, now I get to go to a free Jay-Z show.
But again, this is where when you don't authentically know who you are, you have no self-value, and your worth doesn't allow you to be able to question the dynamics, because the response that's coming it impacts our worth. It impacts the authenticity of our community, and as a result, like, we just can't have Yusef. Let's go get Yusef Shakur, and we're gonna put him in the front of it. No, we need to question why they have a Yusef Bunchy Shakur. We need to question why they have a Kari Frazier. Not just because he's black or she's black. That no longer can just be the criteria, because again, history has taught us where they've had Negroes come in with afros. They've had Negroes come in with dashikis.
And locks and everything. Shea butter, trips to Africa, come in with, pictures with Dr. Ben and Khalid Muhammad and Farrakhan, like, you know, you can think of it, Rosa Parks, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, but this person swindled us. I mean, and this goes right to, I didn't think I was going to get on this topic, but I got to go here now. My neighborhood, which is an extension of your neighborhood in the grand scheme of things, they mesh in my mind. But everything that's happening with Henry Ford right now, in the way that, to me, Henry Ford has aligned itself, Henry Ford Hospital that we know right on West Grand Boulevard. If people don't know, it's like a whole new cancer center built. They've realigned a lot of the streets over there. Absolutely. They have definitely partnered with what the Motown Museum is going to be. You see the partners that Henry Ford has, because any partner at Henry Ford right now is, you know, you probably see some fences and some construction going on, and you see the way that, they're benefiting. Yeah, and even them, you know, they reached out definitely with an olive branch your way at one point in time, and I'm sure you gave them something. But let's get into that, because what does that look like when people know, like, when Henry Ford decides to say, all right, we got a cancer center, and probably we gonna focus on this because we assume that it's money in cancer, and we gonna put it right here, and we want to step up our game in this cancer money.
But you're talking about like a modern day new version of colonialism. Yeah. And this is domestic colonialism in the neighborhoods. And for it to maturate to what it is, you first have to deteriorate the neighborhoods. You have to deteriorate the people. And so, again, what we talked about earlier, neighborhoods like ours, it goes through a process of de-investment. The de-investment, and then along with the criminalization, along with the drugs and the poor schools, all these are recipe for dehumanizing. All these are recipe for creating and maintaining broken neighborhoods and broken people, right? And so now you have all the big businesses, Henry Ford as an example, on the outskirts, and now our neighborhoods become prime real estate. Yeah. You know, so again, this is history 101. This is the white folks putting in flags in the early part of America. Hey, I want this part. Yeah. You know, they searching for the land becomes the goal now. Yeah. The land becomes the goal now. You and I looking at it again, we're like, man, this shit is tearing up. It's going nowhere. But they're examining it. It's right next door to Midtown. It's right next door to downtown. It's surrounded by all the expressway.
I can hop right on that Q line and get all the way downtown.
Right. I mean, their brains are spinning with new ideas. Mm-hmm. But because we've lost our core as ability to stick together, and that's a whole nother show in itself. Again, murder, people leaving out, people being bought out, right? And I was just talking about somebody the other day, like, they were stupid being bought out. But like, again, it goes back to when you ain't never seen a check for $50,000.
That's a lot of money. I get. I would say for my properties at 1652 and 1640 Clements. Maybe about 7 years ago, I probably get a postcard every other year about, are you interested in selling? Yeah. Maybe about 5 years ago, I probably get that postcard maybe 3 times a year. Now I get 4 text messages probably a week about, are you interested in selling your property? Which tells me that obviously some type of city planning is going on. Yeah.
The value went up.
Yeah,
in some way, right?
And on paper, when you go to the website of what city of Detroit will offer my property, it's like pennies on the dollar. But obviously, for them to even be reaching out to me,
and then not everybody's getting the same amount of money. They're having these closed meetings, but I mean, fundamentally, when you eating out of pots and pans that can got shit in it, and you get somebody offering you $20,000.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money for that moment. But again, what we know now, without no financial literacy, without no values, stability, that shit gonna be eat up, right? And so what they've done, what I describe it, they've created intentional blight. They've created a social cancer in the community, and then comes around and say, hey,
we got the solution for you.
Exactly.
I gave you the problem, and I'm gonna give you the solution.
Yeah, but and it's because of, and this is where when we talk about Black Detroit and the value of it, it's very systematic, and we're playing checkers while they're playing chess.
But I really want specifically, because I know the people at Henry Ford did look to reach out to you and others. They didn't. I thought that they intentionally wanted to, and they sent a letter. As you saw what was happening in your neighborhood, how did it go about? How did you become more aware?
The shit happened so fast. Like they intentionally, reached out to certain people. Like again, it's all strategic. Like they start with the elders. Mm-hmm. Because if you can win over the elders, and as a result of the disconnect in our community, like the elders, like, man, I got 10 years left, 5 years left. Yeah. I'm just trying to live as peaceful as I possibly can. And who can argue? I mean, in our community, first the two target most audience is the elders and the young.
Yep.
And our age group is whatever.
Yeah. And
our voices doesn't compare to the elder and the young. And they sell both of them dreams, right? And I remember, once I got a wind of what was going on, they had a meeting up at Tabernacle Church.
Okay.
I can't think of the homie name. She grew up around here, man. I cussed her out. And we end up down the road years later, got cool. And she began to see what I was saying, how Henry Ford was full of shit. But I mean, at the end of the day, she worked for him, right? Mm-hmm. And she figured how do I maneuver in this space, right? Again, what you talked about earlier, the duality of how do I, take care of my bills, but also the authenticity of, because now at this stage, she's realizing where her mother lives on like Linwood and Clemens and shit like that. That's happening over there.
Yeah.
And so it's happening all throughout Detroit. But they use us against each other. Yeah. I repeat, they use us against each other. And so Zone 8, my neighborhood, at the time, I think we was just developing a block club. People were scattered. They had already pretty much on the east side of the neighborhood, they bought them out. I mean, that shit is just sunk. Yeah. On the west side, where I say the central with my mother, that's the central part, and then the further towards southwest side, we're scattered. We're in this fractured zone, right? And so you have West Grand Boulevard Association, who's the leading advocate voice for that area,
for that neighborhood. But it's a different pulse, and I know Mildred and her husband, but they're from a different perspective,
absolutely,
than what I consider Zone 8. Like
absolutely.
It's in Zone 8, but I don't consider that Zone 8.
No, they don't. So Mildred, and at the time, they swoop up our neighborhood. They swoop up some folks, and which rightfully so, it made sense. And I remember one time, so they're countering the Henry Ford plan with working with like Lawrence Tech, some designers, Lawrence Tech. Like this is how we want to vision design the neighborhood. So I come to the meeting one day, and they had this beautiful design map of where they're going to build some shit. Where my mother lives, I don't remember what they had something like, damn, my mother lives there, man. Like, for real, have you even talked to my mother? Like, this is some bullshit. And the white guy, he was very offended. Like, man, I spent all my days and nights working on this. I put so much energy. Like, I don't go for what you did in it. This is disrespectful. And I remember, as things fast forwarded, somebody telling me, Henry Ford and Mildred was about to have a meeting. So I knew Mildred. She's an elder. Yeah. We don't agree on everything. So I like, Mildred, I can come to the meeting, but, I know you're leading the meeting. Can I hire somebody from the neighborhood, to your point? Because Henry Ford has impacted our side of the neighborhood greater than they've impacted
West Grand.
The other West Grand and the other part. They impacted them. I'm not saying they're not. Yeah. But this is where they started, and their plans have not fully unfolded in the other part. And she's like, no, you can't come. Like, what do you mean you can't come, Mildred? This is Zone 8. This is happening. But again, this is where the power dynamics happen. This is where the internal, this is the games. Like, this is Monopoly in real life.
It's the one against the other, when in reality, it's the cohort. So like we say, she is an elder. She's in the work.
I would have
but at some point in time, when it comes to where your mom lives, that's real. And we're watching this before our eyes. And it's definitely people, I'm sure, that will, in the short, as they say, Caesar will throw some pennies at some, but it's still, when Caesar's palace is built, it's not going to be in the best benefit of even those that get the pennies.
So I put things in perspective like this. So we've identified on a small level your neighborhood, my neighborhood, and there's other neighborhoods that are going through the same similar situation.
As you talk about the neo-colonialism, and when people talk about, because it's how it's happened. People talk about gentrification, but it's the displacement in the way that so much value is placed on the assets of the expectations of these white folks that will, quote unquote, look at this place as a utopia that aren't even here. And you got real people here that you just will displace, because back to how they quantify value in capitalism, my value is not seen. The expectation of the white family, and when I say white, I definitely don't necessarily mean even per se skin, because it could be a black family, but the white family, theoretically, is way more the potential of a white family feeling that my neighborhood is the type of neighborhood to move into. That's way more valuable than my black ass being in my house right now.
Yeah, and the dynamic is they've consolidated their power. They've consolidated their vision, and that's where like gentrification is a process. Yeah, it just doesn't happen. Yeah, right. And there's different, like Me'll say, there's levels. There's levels to gentrification. Yeah, and gentrification may look different over here than it does in Zone 8, than it does in downtown. Right, but it's all economic based, and it intersects with race and class and gender, and it's moving folks out. But it's a process too of the de-investment. We can't forget the de-investment. The de-investment is crucial,
and very much so. And I'm glad you gave that story, because people wonder like how this happens, and some of this stuff definitely happens in, I don't want to say because it's in the open, but it's in the dark, and then you wake up one day, like what I dealt with this past summer, and I'll talk about it more later, but I dealt with a lawsuit. A holding company sued every homeowner from, if people know where my neighborhood is, from from Davison, West Davison and Rosa Parks. So basically on my side of Clements. So basically from West Davison and Rosa Parks all the way to Oakman Boulevard. So it's on this lawsuit. If you go into the My Courts file, it is about 100 different people. I was sued for, they say, the easement of how far our alleys will go. And they want to have access to the easement so that they can move trucks through my neighborhood. But to me, that's a first step in just seeing how people respond to a lawsuit. You know, I'm in the hood, man. You send court papers to people in our neighborhood, even me included. It's like, what in the hell is going on? Because if anybody knows, the court system of many of these systems is not a place where black people are set up to win, period. Even if I win, it's a loss because it's going to cost me a lot of time and a lot of money. That's just how court is for black people. Court is never a place as a black man where I ever want to be. And they know that. They know that that's their battlefield. That's their home court.
And to add to your point, so if we was the reverse, right, to sue them, well, what would they do?
They're going to first off send so many continuances. They're gonna roll up their sleeves and they're gonna get court as well. So they're gonna send continuances. They're gonna countersue me. They're gonna kind of do the same thing that happened to your friend in Roseville. They're gonna come to my house and they're gonna say, "Oh, look at this. Look at those gutters right there." Yeah,
but fundamentally, they have the power and the money to put somebody on a dog on that case.
Yeah.
While they continue to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
But to your point, on our end, we don't have that luxury. No. We don't have that privilege to just hire someone to be able to handle this situation while my life continues to goes on. All right, and this is the domino effect, right? The people that we elect, that we so-called say elect, that represents us, they represent the interests of corporations. Yeah. Because this is where ultimately it falls in front of their laps, and they're so excited. Oh, you're going to bring all this new green space, all these so-called jobs. You haven't talked to one motherfucker in the neighborhood. You haven't, again, nobody in the neighborhood is opposed to development. We're opposed to development being imposed on us. I repeat, we're opposed to development being imposed on us, which is another form of domestic colonialism. Because this is where capitalism comes into play. Because at the end of the year, they're only trying to do fucking development because there's $1 on their fucking return.
Yeah, and I love that you said it that way, because especially for the people we know, and sometimes you don't even know what the real plan is. Then you go to look at the zoning files, you look at who's connected to these projects, and that's connected to this holding company and that holding company, and who the hell knows what's going on. But it's aggressive. The lawsuits, the meetings, we did a town hall, we notified these people, and then you look up and it's like, oh shit, I was a part of one of the groups that I didn't even know this shit was going on, and that this would be one of the plays that was associated with what happens. So the ways, as I talk about it, is culturally disconnected to how we move. The way to engage our community is not in these methods, but like you say, because it's never really truly to engage. We're not against the green spaces. We're not against the development. We're not against any new structures. What we're against, like you say, is that being imposed upon us, and then that impacting our quality of life where things will go different. Because if you give me fair market value for my home, it's no way that I'm going to be able to have access to doing the things that I do into another property in another space.
But then here's another aspect to it, the propaganda machine, right? Like you just said, something that's very crucial. It impacts the quality of our life. Yeah. But from the get-go, they don't respect the quality of our life. Yeah. They do not respect the quality. They're opposing their version, what they think the quality of our life should be. And then they propaganda and say, well, we're going to build all this such and such. And now everybody's looking at you like, Kari, what are you doing? They're going to do this and do that. Yeah. Why are you being such a prick?
Here's a classic debate I always used to have with all of my professors about urban development. And I said, it's bullshit because, this is what I'd always say, and they didn't have a rebuttal. And I question any of you all that do have a rebuttal for this. The most valuable land and the most massive amounts of land in America and really even the world. You know the type of land that is, Yusef?
No.
is golf courses.
Okay.
If they put condos on golf courses, that's valuable land. Any place where it's any place that's a ritzy golf course, you can make a shitload of money by putting condos there. But you know why they don't do that shit? Because old, rich, white men like playing golf, and that adds to their quality of life. I've never had a rebuttal from any of my professors, and I've had a lot of them. You know what I'm saying? To that, they just look at me and laugh, and they like, yeah, we like playing golf.
And this is, add to your point, right? When Duggan decided to run for mayor in the city of Detroit, my rebuttal was, and it was a joke, I'm gonna move to Livonia, and run for mayor out there. Yeah, and same thing. They laugh. People laugh because it's a joke. Yeah, and it's meant to be a joke, but the reality is, but he can move to
Detroit
and run for mayor, and it happens. But one of us is like, because again, we don't understand what anti-blackness is. No damn well your black ass ain't about to move. Them white folks ain't about to vote for you, but the black folks will vote for his white ass.
Yeah, I could give a kidney to a voter and he's still not gonna vote for my black ass. Oh. He gonna be like, man, hell no. Because they understand the structure. Just like how people were like, why did all these white women vote for Donald Trump? Because they understand the structure of white supremacy.
But it's also the part of that is supporting what you just said, their quality of life. Yeah. He spoke to that.
Yeah.
And I think, again, at the end of the day, when we talk about the state of Black Detroit, what is the quality of life of state of Black Detroit at this stage? And I think that we have to ask ourselves that collectively. Like, there's enough of us at this stage of the game that's doing very well, but we're doing well as individuals. I can tell you how good I've done on Ferry Park with the Mama Cool House. You can do the same here and others. But until we pull that together collectively, the quality of life of Black Detroit will continue to decrease.
Yeah, because you still need a structure and a home base to go back to collectively. And like I spoke even to, that social capital shit is strong. Because without that heart, without that social capital and how we function, you end up lost in their sauce. And it's sad that we've seen many of our people that I think get lost in their sauce of integration. Because even with the, here's a classic one, I was talking to Suzanne about this, with the death of Colin Powell, and they said, Colin Powell was supporting Barack Obama and he was one of the greatest this and greatest that. And I was like, they never really put his passing into the right perspective. Right. Colin Powell switched to supporting Democrats because they basically gave him a sword to die on because they gave him misinformation intentionally, and he sat up there and shit, even couldn't travel the world because he was, up on charges of war crimes for lying about weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
That's what he was integrated in that system. He was the most respected black person, and they intentionally used his agency as the most respected person of the George W. Bush presidential cabinet to go out there to lie to America intentionally, knowing he was lying to America intentionally. That's, to me, what integration looks like. They will use you in your agency for when they need to, and they'll have you stand up there and fall on the sword, and you'll be the fall guy, because that's how they get down, man.
Right.
Whereas our people have a different amount of love for us, especially when you're sincere with the people. We identify with you differently. We would never leave you in that space. We're going to definitely honor where your mistakes were, where your misgivings were, but we're going to welcome you back and never put you in that position where you're going to compromise your integrity like that.
Most definitely. Man, no, this is, man, we covered a lot.
Yeah, man. And we're going to cover more, man, or you're going to cover more. I'm going to give my own definition of Black Detroit. I'm excited. That's coming up. So 2 days from now, and you got these snippets and stuff like that. You broke it down. I like that. Quality of life for Black Detroit. And I'm sure you're going to give the context of Black Detroit. And we're going to continue this. Thank you, Yusef. And when I say we're going to continue this, meaning every year we will continue upon this address, and we're going to see what happens, man, as time goes, bro.
Most definitely, man. man.
So I don't know if you want to give information or, whatever.
No, I mean, I think we said enough here, man. I mean, people know me. I ain't hard to find. Yusef Bunchy Shakur on Facebook. We got the Mama Cool House. We still trying to navigate this COVID thing. We're doing on Vegan Tuesdays. We got some other stuff that we'll be rolling out. We're just gonna roll out in January. Actually, I'm thinking postponing to March. But actually, one program I'm excited about, Big Mama Sundays, where we're gonna be cooking food and doing feed the people, but taking a different concept around it, where again we're going grocery shopping and we're cooking it as if we're having Sunday dinners. Most folks can come and take the food with them. So we got some stuff that's in the works that we're trying to continue to work out.
That's what's up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, big bro.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was.
I don't know why I thought
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.